What I want to do today is actually get you started doing your own research. I'm going to talk about some organizations that did research to make inroads with audiences that they hadn't had luck with in the past. And they did it often on little or no funding. It's a little disingenuous for me to say it's free, because the work has to be done. It takes time and it takes discipline. And I'm also going to be quite honest, you're not going to do some grand data mining project on your own. Maybe you will. Maybe there's mathematicians in here that could do that. Most of you, I'm guessing, don't have that kind of a background. But you can do simple research projects to learn enough about your audiences to open doors. I'm going to show you some examples of that today. And audience research can do three things for us. First thing it can do, obviously, is help us learn about audiences. Pinpoint why they may not be coming today. And pinpoint what we can do to help to attract them. Also, and this is important, I'll touch a little bit on this today, but not too much, it can help us design more effective promotions. So marketing, make better postcards, things that actually attract attention. If we're lucky enough, and people do come and see our performances, we can also track our progress. Are we getting the folks we think that we're getting? How are they getting here? How did they hear about us? Are they having a good time? Will they come back? These are absolutely critical things that we need to know if we're trying to build audiences, but we often don't do it. And it can really be like this, sort of finding your way in the dark. I think Lynn O'Connor said this, the arts researcher. It's really like, if you don't do research, you're finding your way in the dark. Magda Martinez, who's the chief operating officer of Mural Arts Philadelphia, put it this way. Because she tried in her organization to get people to come unsuccessfully for a few years. Then did research and got them to come by the hundreds. When we weren't doing research, it was like inviting guests to dinner without first finding out what they like to eat or what food allergies they may have. I want to start with a quick example to show you how research can be effective. Anybody that's ever seen me speak ever before has seen me talk about this group because I love them. And I love them because they did a little bit of research that went a long way. They knew what they needed to know. They were very focused about it. They didn't just say, let's find out this and this and this. They said, no, we have this problem. Let's figure out how to solve it. It is the San Francisco Girls Chorus. They're pictured here. How many are familiar with the Girls Chorus or have heard of it? Oh, quite a few. Wow. Okay, so they were founded in 1978 in San Francisco. They have a school, but also a performing ensemble of about 45 girls, ages 12 to 18. They do 8 concerts a year. Actually, it's 4 different. The program is 4 different concerts that they perform twice. Once in San Francisco, and the other on the other side of the bay. And they have a good-sized organization, right? Audience of 8,000, budget of $2 million. Now, they had a problem that's common to many choruses. This chorus is considered the leading choral ensemble for treble voices in the world. They have performed around the world. This is at Carnegie Hall last year. Some of you may have seen this performing with Philip Glass, who insisted that they were there. And they performed in Asia, Europe. They performed at President Obama's inauguration. And in the past 15 years, they've won 5 classical music Grammy Awards. This is a serious organization. However, in their own backyard, like many choral ensembles, they were unknown, which is crazy. You've got this Grammy-winning, internationally touring choral ensemble, but like many choral ensembles, the concerts were attended by friends and family of the choristers. There's a big classical music audience in San Francisco. They go to see Philharmonia Baroque. They go to the symphony. They go see chamber music. They were not going to see the girls' chorus, and the girls' chorus wanted to figure out what's going on. So they did some focus groups. How many people are familiar with focus groups? Okay, if you all talk a little bit about them. They talked to classical music patrons, people that were going to see Philharmonia Baroque, but were not finding their way into the girls' chorus concerts. And they had them in what's called a focus group. And I'm going to talk a lot about focus groups today, so let me tell you what they are. They're moderated discussions. What I mean by that is, I do these professionally. I have a guy, 10 minutes I'm talking this, 10 minutes I'm talking this, 10 minutes, and I get the conversation going. They're 90 minutes to 2 hours each. And you want to get 6 to 8 people in the group. That's a good conversation size usually. And you also want to make sure they're very similar to each other, that they have a lot to share. They have that intense conversation with each other. You do 3 groups at a minimum, and we often recruit them professionally, but you don't have to. These are just guidelines, but it's what we typically see. Now what the girls' chorus did is they did 3 focus groups, 3 of these moderated discussions with those classical music patrons in San Francisco, and asked them, have you heard of the girls' chorus? What do you know? Why don't you go? What do you look for? What did they hear? Well, when you say girls' chorus to classical music patrons, they hear amateur glee club. They do not hear, they cannot think of this, which is this, sort of the sexist thing, because they can see the Vienna Boys Choir, capable of artistic heights, but these girls, no. I know, this is a persisting problem in the field. San Francisco Girls Chorus's own marketing didn't help. They were shooting themselves in the foot. This was their homepage of their website, and the focus group moderator showed it to the classical music patrons and says, well, here they are. And the classical music patron said, is that a class trip? I thought the Girl Scouts were green. Somebody's parents took that, and probably some, not parents, but someone's mother or father probably did. And look, nothing against glee clubs, nothing against the Girl Scouts, but this is not what classical music patrons want to be doing with their weekend. So the girls' chorus was advertising the wrong product. They also found out, they talked about the front of house expectations, buying tickets. The box office experience was not what classical music patrons expected. What they did find out, though, was classical music patrons were more responsive to other kinds of images, like these, showing close-ups of just a few girls, or the girls singing. And so what the girls' chorus did is they made a whole bunch of changes. They didn't change the repertoire one bit. They didn't change who they were, but they changed how they presented themselves and talked about themselves. And when they started the initiative, only 18% of the people in the audience were classical music patrons, and they wanted to get that up. The rest, 82%, were friends and family of the choristers. Now it's kind of gone up and down over the years, but now they get upwards of over 20%, sometimes up to near 50%. This little bit of research went a long way, and it gave them the information they need to figure out how to appeal to classical music patrons. Now we know, I think, that research can do this, but we don't do it. Why don't we do it? What are some of the reasons why we don't do research?
Time.
Time?
Money.
Money.
Time.
It's funny, when I first started, like not to brag, but like I've been doing research for years, and I thought it'd be like, I should be like, oh, it's expertise, we don't have you. No. It's like, you don't have the time to do it. So I want to argue today, like, I use this image just because, like, you totally have the power to do this, just like she had the power with her all the time, right? You have the power to do this. What I want to help you figure out today is how we can do this in a way that's cost effective, so we're spending our money wisely, and also time effective, so we're not wasting our time. We're asking the right questions, doing it the right way. And the first step really is, we can collect data, and a lot of us, how many collect data? Sorry about all the questions. How many collect data strategically? And it's usually fewer. I mean, strategically, what I mean by that is, you're going to do something differently because of it. A lot of times we collect it because the funder asked us to, or we've always done the survey. I hear that a lot. We've always done it this way. But we're not doing it in a way that's strategic. And what I mean by that is it actually has an impact. And there's a process here. I put this here, it seems kind of basic, but it's not, because I can't tell you how many times I get the phone call, at least once a month. I want to do audience research. Here's what I want to find out. I want to know this, this, and this. What are you going to do with the information? They don't know. Then you do that. If you start with, I want to know this, and not with, here's what I want to do, you're not going to have a focused project. You start with, here's what I want, like the girls' chorus. How do we get those classical music patrons? That led them to, what do they think of us? Why aren't they coming? Led to a rigid set of questions that focus their research. You translate what you want to do. Let's say it's in the back, you may not be able to see it. Let's say you have a goal of attracting young people to our shows. That's how you start research. You have a goal. Then you go to the research questions. What do we want to find out to answer that question? And it may be things like, are they aware of us? What do they know about us? How do they prefer to spend their leisure time? And then we move to a research design. We figure out what's the research that we're going to do in order to get this done. And we have a lot of choice. We could do surveys, we could do focus groups like the girls' chorus, we could do interviews, one-on-one, and that's just a few. I want to share with you, if you leave with one thing today, and you can tune out for the rest of the time, I swear, I won't get offended. But I want you to pay attention for the next 5 minutes, because this is the mistake that I see people make all the time. This will tell you how to move from your research question to your research design. What kind of research should you do? There are two kinds of data that we want to deal with. Some of it is counts, and that's when we really think of data, we're thinking of counts. How many? How many people at our last performance were under 34? How many people at our last performance were there for the first time? What % of people were African American? When you have those kinds of counts, measures, how many, how much, you want to measure it and you want an objective measure. You don't just look around. You want an objective measure, you do a survey. Don't do a focus group, you do a survey. That's when you do a survey, and that's really the only time you should do a survey. When your questions are how many, what, how much. And it's especially valuable when you want to track over time. You know, the support for Mayor de Blasio, our mayor here in New York City. Let's look at it among working class people. And you can, it's going up, it's going down, you know. People love to do that, so you can look over time and see progress and see how things move. But there's another kind of data. And this is the data that when we're dealing about learning about new audiences, this is the data we're most often interested in. The questions are why, how come, why aren't they coming? How do they spend their leisure time? What would make them happy? When we want that, the data, it's data, but we don't think of it as data because it's words, it's concepts. Like the girls' chorus data, that was data. Classical music patrons think hear girls' chorus and think Glee Club. That's data. You're never going to hear that in a survey. I can't tell you how many times I have seen organizations say, we want to get young people, let's do a survey. And then, time and time again, they say that was a waste of money and a waste of our precious time. You do focus groups. I mean, I'll talk about some organizations today. I can think of the two of them that I'll talk about today, Clay Studio and Pacific Northwest Ballet. They did both focus groups and surveys, and they said, we need to look at the survey. It got us nowhere. We needed the data like what the girls' chorus got. So if your questions are how, why, what, you want focus groups and interviews. If it's numbers and counts, you want a survey. If you leave with one thing today, now I sound like Susie Orman, like, are you kidding me? If you leave with one thing today, please, this will save you time and money. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about focus groups. Focus groups, and I'll talk about them a lot because they really are the workhorse for us. They're really, really helpful. There are other things you can use in interviews as well to get this data, but focus groups are great. They're really good for exploring, like I said, what, how, and why. And the questions, when we're talking about new audiences that we're most often going to encounter, why don't they visit? What do they think about us or know about our work? Often it's nothing, right? What do they look for when they're going out, and how does that match up with what they think they're going to find here, and how can we reach them? Focus groups, it doesn't have to be formal. The girls' chorus did formal focus group research. They had a moderator or a professional, but you actually can do it yourself. Research can help us speak the language of new audiences that we want to get. An example that I'm going to use is the Pacific Northwest Ballet. They're in Seattle, and they were trying to get teens and young adults to come to the ballet. I'll give away the punchline. Now 4,000 teens a year buy their own tickets. Not parents buying tickets, but buy their own tickets to the ballet. They've had wild success, but it wasn't always that way. They were pulling their teeth. It was like pulling teeth, whatever, to get those kids to come. And they say in their advertising, we thought we had to show the grandeur of the art form. And if you're my friend Judy Nadelson, and you see the discipline on her face, the years of work, the practice, the intensity. But what if you're Bob Harlow? What do you see? And this is what focus group people say. It's somebody in a weird pose. And they weren't trying to be snarky, right? I mean, this was not, it's like, and the marketing director was like, oh my God, that's exactly right. If you don't know ballet, if you don't know, and they said, it's like there's nothing in here that's inviting me here. Nothing is saying come. She's like not even looking at me. It's like they said it's like looking through a keyhole. This performance does not look exciting. This looks like a boring night. It's beige on black on yellow on beige on black. And while it's perfect for the people that know this world and know the language and understand it, it doesn't work for newcomers. What they did find though is what will appeal to these folks is show an expression somebody can hook into. At first, this freaked out the artistic director. Luckily, he was at the focus groups and saw, because this woman on the right not in a perfect pose at all, she would get an F. But she is looking at you, it creates immediacy, it creates excitement, it's advertising that actually looks like advertising, and somebody might pick it up. And like I said, they've had amazing success with teens and young adults. Like their teen audiences have more than doubled in the past few years at a time when teen audiences are declining. I just want to give you one more example, and this comes not from the performing arts, it's from the Clay Studio in Philadelphia. The Clay Studio, they have a ceramic shop, they do classes, they have workshops, they have a gallery. You can create stuff in the Clay Studio. Ceramic artists are beautiful. They are beautiful. And the Clay Studio staff there was so enamored by the objects in the gallery. You wouldn't be. You walk through that place, it's like clay looks like sapphire, looks like crystal, looks like that. I mean, they can do amazing things with clay. And that's what they would put on the brochures. Why not? It's beautiful, right? But if you don't know, and that works for the folks that go to the Clay Studio, right? But if you don't, by the way, the executive director, he didn't know what that was either. So I'm like, what? And you're like, I don't know. So, but if you know clay, and you appreciate clay, and you understand what the Clay Studio is, that says a lot to you. You're like, oh my gosh, who did that? What is it? Who's the artist? If you're not, however, you don't even pick it up. They did focus groups with young professionals. That's who they wanted to get in, to the Clay Studio. And they realized that young professionals don't appreciate ceramics in the same way that ceramic people that have been studying it for years do. But there was stuff about the Clay Studio that did get them excited. When they found out they could actually make stuff at the Clay Studio, they were thrilled. So the Clay Studio changed its marketing completely, showing people actually touching the clay, making the clay, touching each other, having a good time. It's like, this is what you can do at the Clay Studio. I hid this slide. Let me see if I can unhide it, because I have the results here. You can look at this. Look at the results. This is them doing research, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It's clay, so I didn't want to do it, but they were flat for many, many years in revenue. Then they did some research and focus groups to come up with some ideas. Did some research to figure out how to do their advertising. They have tripled their revenue. And mind you, this was the economic crisis. At a time when budgets were shrinking, they were doing research to figure out how do we get new people, and their budgets expanded. And they were like, why weren't we doing this all along? And I have to tell you, one of the keys to success for this group is that creative people, smart people, and they listened to the research. And they were willing to say, you know what, it's not about us, it's about them. One of my favorite quotes from this work comes from the Amy Sarner-Williams. She was the president and CEO at the time, describing what she heard in focus groups. We had this tagline, which was on all their brochures, shaping the future of ceramics. She said, that was great, but that was for us. Not so much for this audience. That was a real eye-opener. People would say to us in focus groups, why would I look at this? What would make me want to come? I've got to look at something right away and see there's something there for me. Actually, the amazing thing about this is this woman had been a founding member of the Clay Studio, and she'd been there for 40 years. I don't know. I honestly don't know how somebody... If I heard people say that and that my advertising stunk, I'd probably walk out of the focus groups. She stayed there and she listened to what they had to say and said, if we want to get this audience, we have to make some changes. And they did. And they still produce this. This is a huge brochure, and they produce it for their long-standing fans, and they send it out. And they love it, and they're happy to get it. They also make those kinds of advertisements as well to make sure that they get young people. As I mentioned, focus groups are so great. When I've got, my first framework I already went through, right? When you've got what, how, and why questions, I'm immediately thinking focus groups. Or interviews, and focus groups usually. I love focus groups because the thing about focus groups, when I do an interview with somebody, they're so formal and nice. Whereas in a focus group, after like 20 minutes, it's like those circuit freaks, those fitness people. You know the fitness people I was telling you, the CrossFit people. Right? After 20 minutes, they're all like, yeah, and then you do the thing with a rope, and they get so into it, and they really spill their guts. They're not being polite anymore. And that's what you want. You know what I mean, right? Not that they want to be rude, but you know what I mean. Being honest, right? Speaking their mind, not saying, oh no, I love the ballet. You know, like they're like, Really? You know, they will totally tell you, like, yeah, she looks like she's in pain. Like, they will totally tell you that stuff. Focus groups are great for, why don't they visit? What do they, and I always ask this, what do they know about our work? Sometimes they'll give you a blank stare. And that's data. They don't know. Because they're not going to get excited about something they don't know, right? It's like NASCAR. Like NASCAR, I don't know. I used to think NASCAR was like a punchline. It is so. And then like I went with my godfather because it was, and I'm like, who knew this was happening? It's like so much fun. But like before, like 3 years ago, I'd have been like, I don't know. That's data. But once he filled in the blanks for me, I was all in. What do they look for when they go out? I always want to figure out, okay, I've got young people, I've got this event, what do they think happens at my venue, and what do they look for when they're going out? Is there a matchup? Is there a disconnect there? And how can we reach them? Good research always starts with a question. And that's what you should have in mind today. Don't say we want to get more people. Start with a specific question like, here are some that I've heard in the past. Our town or city has a large older or younger adult population, but I rarely see them at our shows. How do we attract them? We attract newcomers, but few come back. Why not? How can we get current visitors to attend more? It's not always getting a new audience, and sometimes you get people that come once a year. Can we get them to come twice a year or something like that, right? Another thing, and this is something that, you know, Lucas Held at the Wallace Foundation always says this. He says, successful initiatives, and I'm stealing it right from him, are targeted. Successful audience building initiatives have a target audience in mind. They're not just like, let's just get everybody. They're like, you know, we don't have, it's always millennials, right? But that's what people want. We don't have millennials. Let's learn about them, figure out where they are, how to meet them. When you target like that, you can do that. You can create advertising that appeals to them. And it will appeal to other people as well. Now, how do we define a target audience? If you're not, you know, you can think of one, it could be a demographic, like it could be middle-aged professional women, like the Minnesota Opera was looking for, the Latino community, students, empty nesters. It could be behavior-based. I want to get lapsed patrons to come back. I want to get jazz neophytes here. It could, so think of a target audience that's important to you. We want to figure out what questions we want to ask the target audience. All right, that's a big thing that people get stuck on. I'm stuck on it right here. But seriously, people get stuck on it. What questions do we have? Because there are so many reasons why they may not be coming, right? How do you narrow it down? Because you don't want to be all over the map, right? When the San Francisco Girls Chorus talked to classical music patrons, they didn't say, do you have time to come? They didn't say, do you have money to come? Because they knew they were already going to places. They already knew they were going to see classical music performances. When the Clay Studio talked to people, or Pacific Northwest Ballet, they said, well, what do you think of the ballet? They actually, and then the Girls Chorus did that too. What do you think of the Girls Chorus? When I hear Girls Chorus, I think Glee Club. How do they know to do that? How do they know to ask the right questions? We found in our work with the Wallace Foundation that successful initiatives were targeted based, used to attack barriers that matched the mindset of the audience, their relationship to you. What does that mean? There are some audiences, we'll call them disinclined. That's what they've been called in the past. And now I'm talking about some work commissioned by the Wallace Foundation done by the Ballet. They're disinclined. You could put the performance on for free in their lobby, and they're still not going to come, right? These are people like the classical music patrons in San Francisco. Why would I go see the Girls Chorus at Glee Club, right? They're disinclined. They could be millennials that are not thinking of you today. When you want to reach those folks, what you need to do is you need to first attack perceptual barriers. It's not about price. It's not about place. It's not about logistics. It is about perceptions. That's why the Girls Chorus started by saying, what do you think of the Girls Chorus? That's how they got all that great information. They did, and it's actually detailed in that book. They said, what do you think happens at a Girls Chorus concert? And the classical music patron said, probably in a church basement, folding chairs, jazz hands, Disney tunes.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, it's good. I mean, that's good. I know, and it was really hard for them. Like, yeah, it's hard work, because you're going to hear that when people, like, when you ask disinclined people what they think, but that's good data. You just sit there and you listen, and you just, you want to hear it, right? And that's what you get. So you have a disinclined audience. What you want to do, they're really saying, is this for people like me? And you want to target perceptions or relevance. Sometimes you've got an inclined audience. And these are people that are sort of, yeah, I used to go to, museums in the past. I just stopped. Once I had kids or, the chamber music, I used to go, but, and performing arts deal with this all the time. There's this drop off at age 25. I used to go in the past, but I just stopped. Or once we moved to the suburbs, forget it, right? You don't have to ask about perceptions. They're already inclined. They're on your side. They may be people that are already going to see other performing arts. Talk to them about, their questions are, does it fit my budget? If they're not going, and if they're inclined, if they're not going, it's because it doesn't fit their budget or schedule. It's logistics. Maybe you're too far. Maybe parking is a pain. So focus the research on those. Sometimes we focus on our current audiences. We want them to come more. We already know they're on our side. We already know the perceptions are good. They've come once. We already know it fits in their budget and schedule. Focus instead, you're only coming once. Why don't you come more? Are we delivering? Or are we not delivering? Is the marketing speaking to you? What's going on here? Talk about the experience with them. That's what Minnesota Opera did. Minnesota Opera, when they were the ones that talked about, they did the radio promotions. When they got the people that had come to the opera but didn't come back, they said, what's going on? Was it not fun? We loved it. Well, what didn't you like? The marketing. They heard all that kind of stuff. They didn't talk about price. They talked a little bit about that, but they didn't talk about perceptions. Did you think it was going to be stuff? There was no need to. You talk about that. And it was really interesting. We found in the work, my team, when we were evaluating programs of Wallace Foundation grantees, we found that when they followed this framework, they had success. When they didn't follow it, and museums are so bad at this. Museums will go for the disinclined audience, people that haven't heard of you, and give them free passes. Never, ever works, and they keep doing it. We tell them to stop, they keep doing it. No, seriously, we do. And it works the other way too. An inclined audience, you don't have to work on perceptions. Work on logistics. Make it easier for them to get there. Bring the art to them. Be open at a different time that's more accessible to them. The current audiences, focus on the experience. Find out what brings them there in the first place, and how you can up the ante on that so that they get that experience that they're looking for, so it's sticky and they want to come back. Why that's important for us, it's important in and of itself. It was a valuable lesson for us, but it's also important because it tells us when we're doing research, where do we focus our questions? If I've got a disinclined audience, they're not thinking of us now, I'm going to talk mostly in the focus groups about perceptions, values, and what they think of our marketing. I'll talk a little bit about price and practical barriers. I'm not going to talk about the experience at all, because they haven't been there. But I'm going to focus really on, what do you think happens at the ballet? Who do you think goes there? When you ask them that, who else is going to be at the ballet? You hear them say, people in fur coats. Oh, in the Pacific Northwest Ballet, somebody said, going to the ballet would be like sitting with someone else's parents. Which tells you a lot. That it wasn't price that was keeping them away, it was that. What kind of fun night is that, right? So they knew they had to work on perceptions, right? If you've got an inclined audience and you're talking to them, talk about the practical barriers. Does this work for you? Where do you find information about performances and shows? Are we on your radar screen? A lot of times it's just that. Some of the practical information is just, do they know the dates? Do they know the times? Are you advertising the places that they're looking? Are you online where you need to be? And if it's the current audience and you're doing research with them, spend most of your time talking about that experience. Why do you come here? What gets you to come here? Steppenwolf Theater Company did this wonderful project where they found out that when they wanted to get people to come, they were coming once a year, once every 2 years, to come more often. They did focus groups all around the experience. Why do you come to Steppenwolf? It's a theater ensemble theater in Chicago. And they said, we come to Steppenwolf because Steppenwolf has this reputation for challenging theater. We want to be pushed, we want to be pushed out of our comfort zone, we want to explore. So they learned about that in the focus group and all about that. And then from that, they didn't change their programming, but they created opportunities for them on-site and online to explore. And the number of people buying tickets to more than one show per year went up 61% in 2 years. What they did there, so smart. Focus on the experience, and they did their research to figure out what it was and how they could deliver it better. Okay, so I got a little off target here, or got a little out of order here. So think about your target audience. Who's your target audience? And think about what's their relationship to you today. Are you going after an inclined audience, one that's open to attending? A disinclined audience that's not open to attending? Or a current audience, one that's already attending?